Welcome! Today, we're diving into the eviction process, a legal procedure that can be stressful for both landlords and tenants. Whether you're a renter or a property owner, understanding what happens during an eviction is crucial. In this video, we'll walk through each step, from the initial notice to the final resolution. By the end, you'll have a clear picture of how evictions unfold and what rights and responsibilities each party has. Let's start by looking at what triggers an eviction and why it's important to follow the correct legal steps. Evictions don't just happen out of the blue. There are several common reasons why a landlord might start the eviction process. The most frequent cause is non-payment of rent, but other issues can also lead to eviction, such as violating lease terms, causing property damage, or engaging in illegal activities on the premises. Sometimes, landlords may need to reclaim their property for personal use or to make significant repairs. Understanding these reasons helps both tenants and landlords know what to expect and how to avoid unnecessary disputes. The eviction process officially begins when the landlord serves the tenant with a written notice. This notice outlines the reason for eviction and gives the tenant a specific time frame to fix the issue or move out. For example, a pay or quit notice gives the tenant a few days to pay overdue rent, while a cure or quit notice addresses lease violations. The type of notice and the time allowed for response can vary depending on local laws. It's essential for landlords to serve this notice properly, as improper notice can delay or invalidate the eviction. There are several types of eviction notices, each serving a different purpose. The most common are pay or quit, which demands payment of overdue rent, and cure or quit, which addresses lease violations. There's also the unconditional quit notice, which requires the tenant to leave without the option to fix the issue. The notice type depends on the situation and local regulations. Tenants should read these notices carefully as they outline what actions are needed to avoid eviction. Once the tenant receives an eviction notice, they have several options. They can resolve the issue, such as paying overdue rent or correcting a lease violation within the time frame given. Alternatively, they might choose to move out voluntarily. In some cases, tenants may dispute the notice if they believe it's unjustified or if the landlord didn't follow proper procedures. Responding promptly and communicating with the landlord can sometimes prevent the situation from escalating to court. If the tenant doesn't resolve the issue or move out by the deadline stated in the notice, the landlord can take the next step. This usually means filing a formal eviction lawsuit, often called an unlawful detainer action, in the local court. At this point, the process becomes a legal matter, and both parties may need to gather evidence and prepare for a court hearing. It's important for both landlords and tenants to understand their rights and obligations as the case moves forward. To officially start the court process, the landlord files a complaint with the local court. This document details the reasons for eviction and includes supporting evidence, such as the lease agreement and copies of the notice served. The court then schedules a hearing date and notifies the tenant. Both parties should prepare their cases, as the outcome will depend on the evidence and arguments presented in court. This step marks the transition from a private dispute to a public legal matter. After the landlord files the lawsuit, the tenant must be officially notified. This is done through a process called service of process, where court papers are delivered to the tenant, usually in person or by mail. These documents inform the tenant of the lawsuit and the date of the court hearing. Proper service is crucial. If the tenant isn't served correctly, the case could be delayed or dismissed. Tenants should read these papers carefully and respond as instructed. Once served, the tenant has a limited time, often just a few days, to respond to the court. This response, called an answer, allows the tenant to admit or deny the landlord's claims and present any defenses. Common defenses include improper notice, landlord retaliation, or uninhabitable living conditions. Failing to respond can result in a default judgment in favor of the landlord. Tenants should take this step seriously and consider seeking legal advice if needed. Both the landlord and tenant should gather all relevant documents and evidence before the court date. This might include the lease agreement, payment records, photos of the property, and copies of all communications. Witnesses may also be called to testify. Being organized and prepared can make a significant difference in the outcome. It's also a good idea for both parties to review local laws or consult with a legal professional to ensure they understand their rights. On the day of the hearing, both parties present their cases before a judge. The landlord explains why eviction is justified, while the tenant can present defenses or evidence to challenge the eviction. The judge listens to both sides, reviews the evidence, and may ask questions. Sometimes, the judge makes a decision right away. Other times, they may take a few days to issue a ruling. The court hearing is a critical moment that determines the next steps. After the hearing, the judge will issue a decision. If the landlord wins, the court grants an eviction order, also known as a writ of possession. This gives the landlord the legal right to reclaim the property. If the tenant wins, they can remain in the home and the eviction is dismissed. Sometimes, the judge may order a compromise, such as giving the tenant more time to move out. Both parties must follow the court's decision, and failing to do so can lead to further legal trouble. If the court rules in favor of the landlord, a writ of possession is issued. This legal document authorizes law enforcement to remove the tenant if they don't leave voluntarily. The writ is usually delivered to the tenant, giving them a final deadline, often a few days, to vacate the property. If the tenant still doesn't move out, the sheriff or another official will carry out the eviction. This step ensures the process is handled legally and safely. Law enforcement plays a key role in the final stage of eviction. If the tenant hasn't left by the deadline, officers arrive at the property to enforce the writ of possession. They may supervise the removal of the tenant and their belongings, ensuring everything is done peacefully and according to the law. Landlords are not allowed to remove tenants themselves. Only authorized officials can carry out this step. This protects everyone's rights and safety. When an eviction is carried out, the tenant's belongings may be removed from the property. Local laws determine how these items are handled. Sometimes they're placed on the curb, while in other cases, they're stored for a period before disposal. Tenants should try to remove their possessions before the eviction date to avoid loss or extra fees. Landlords must follow the law when handling tenant property to avoid legal issues. Once the eviction is complete, the landlord regains possession of the property. They may need to clean, repair, or change the locks before renting to a new tenant. For the former tenant, eviction can have serious consequences, including difficulty finding new housing and damage to their credit. It's important for both parties to understand the long-term impacts and take steps to avoid eviction whenever possible. An eviction can stay on a tenant's record for years, making it harder to rent in the future. Many landlords and property managers check eviction records and credit reports when screening applicants. A history of eviction can also lower a tenant's credit score and affect their ability to secure loans or other housing. Tenants should be aware of these consequences and seek help early if they're struggling to pay rent or facing eviction. After regaining possession, landlords often need to assess the property for damage, make repairs, and prepare it for new tenants. They may also need to pursue unpaid rent or damages through small claims court. Proper documentation and following legal procedures help landlords avoid further disputes and protect their investment. It's also a good time to review screening processes to prevent future issues. Facing eviction can be overwhelming, but legal aid organizations and tenant advocacy groups can help. These groups offer advice, representation, and resources for tenants who can't afford a lawyer. Landlords can also seek legal counsel to ensure they follow the law. Knowing where to find help can make a big difference in navigating the eviction process and protecting your rights. Many communities offer eviction prevention programs that provide financial assistance, mediation, or counseling to tenants at risk of losing their homes. These programs aim to resolve disputes before they reach the court stage, helping tenants stay housed and landlords avoid costly legal battles. If you're struggling to pay rent, reaching out to these resources early can make a significant difference. Open and honest communication between landlords and tenants can often prevent eviction. Discussing payment plans, temporary hardships, or lease concerns early on can lead to solutions that work for both parties. Many disputes escalate simply because of misunderstandings or lack of dialogue. Building a respectful relationship can help avoid legal action and foster a positive rental experience. A clear and detailed lease agreement is the foundation of a good landlord-tenant relationship. Both parties should read and understand the lease before signing. The lease outlines rent amounts, due dates, responsibilities, and what happens if rules are broken. Knowing your lease terms can help prevent disputes and provide a roadmap if issues arise during the tenancy. Keeping thorough records is essential for both landlords and tenants. Save copies of the lease, payment receipts, repair requests, and all communications. Documentation can serve as evidence if a dispute arises or if the case goes to court. Organized records help clarify what happened and protect your interests throughout the eviction process. Mediation is a process where a neutral third party helps landlords and tenants resolve disputes without going to court. It's often faster, less expensive, and less stressful than a lawsuit. Many communities offer free or low-cost mediation services. If you're facing eviction, consider mediation as a way to find a solution that works for everyone involved. The COVID-19 pandemic led to temporary changes in eviction laws, including moratoriums and rental assistance programs. While many protections have expired, some areas still have special rules in place. It's important to check local regulations and seek help if you're affected by pandemic-related financial hardship. Both landlords and tenants should stay informed about current laws and available resources. It's illegal for landlords to evict tenants without following the proper legal process. Actions like changing the locks, shutting off utilities, or removing belongings without a court order are considered illegal evictions. Tenants who experience this can take legal action against the landlord, Both parties should always follow the law to avoid serious consequences. Tenants have rights throughout the eviction process. They must receive proper notice, have the opportunity to respond in court, and cannot be removed without a court order. Tenants can also raise defenses, such as improper notice or uninhabitable conditions. Knowing your rights can help you protect yourself and ensure the process is fair. Landlords also have rights during the eviction process. They can seek legal remedies if tenants violate the lease or fail to pay rent. Landlords have the right to reclaim their property through the courts, but must follow all legal procedures. Acting within the law protects landlords from liability and ensures a fair process for everyone involved. Evictions cannot be based on discrimination. Laws protect tenants from being evicted because of race, religion, gender, disability, or other protected characteristics. If a tenant believes they are being targeted unfairly, they can file a complaint with fair housing agencies. Both landlords and tenants should be aware of these protections to ensure fair treatment. If a tenant disagrees with the court's decision, they may have the right to appeal. The appeals process involves filing paperwork with a higher court and may require legal representation. Appeals can delay the eviction, but tenants must follow strict deadlines and procedures. It's important to act quickly and seek legal advice if considering an appeal. Eviction can be especially hard on families with children. Losing a home can disrupt schooling, cause emotional distress, and lead to instability. Some communities offer special support for families facing eviction, such as emergency housing or counseling. If you have children, seek out these resources early to minimize the impact. Tenants with disabilities have additional protections under the law. Landlords must provide reasonable accommodations and cannot evict tenants for reasons related to their disability. If you have a disability and are facing eviction, reach out to advocacy groups or legal aid for help. Understanding your rights can make a big difference in the outcome. Victims of domestic violence have special protections during eviction. In many areas, landlords cannot evict tenants solely because they are victims. Some laws allow victims to break a lease early or request a lock change for safety. If you're in this situation, seek help from local support organizations and know your rights under the law. Immigration status does not affect a tenant's right to due process during eviction. Landlords cannot threaten to report tenants to immigration authorities as a way to force them out. Tenants, regardless of status, have the right to proper notice and a court hearing. If you're worried about your status, seek help from legal aid or immigrant advocacy groups. Pets can complicate the eviction process. Some leases prohibit pets, and violating these terms can lead to eviction. However, service animals are protected by law and cannot be used as a reason for eviction. If you have a pet and are facing eviction, review your lease and know your rights regarding service animals and reasonable accommodations. Landlords cannot shut off utilities like water, electricity, or gas to force a tenant to leave. This is considered an illegal eviction. If your utilities are shut off during an eviction, contact local authorities or legal aid immediately. Both landlords and tenants should understand that only the court can order a legal eviction. After an eviction, landlords may use the tenant's security deposit to cover unpaid rent or damages. However, they must provide an itemized statement and return any remaining funds within a set timeframe. Tenants should document the property's condition and request a final inspection to avoid disputes over the deposit. If there are disputes over unpaid rent, damages, or the return of a security deposit after eviction, either party can file a case in small claims court. This process is usually simpler and less formal than regular court. Both landlords and tenants should bring all relevant documents and evidence to support their claims. Some communities offer moving assistance to tenants facing eviction. This can include help finding new housing, financial aid for moving expenses, or referrals to shelters. If you're at risk of eviction, ask local agencies about available programs. Early action can help ease the transition and prevent homelessness. Eviction is a leading cause of homelessness. Losing stable housing can make it difficult to find work, maintain health, or care for family. Many organizations work to prevent homelessness by offering emergency shelter, food, and support services. If you're facing eviction, reach out for help as soon as possible to avoid becoming homeless. The stress of eviction can take a toll on mental health. Anxiety, depression, and fear are common among those facing housing loss. Many communities offer counseling and mental health support for tenants and families in crisis. Don't hesitate to seek help if you're struggling emotionally during the eviction process. Eviction cases become part of the public record, which means anyone can access them. This can affect a tenant's reputation and ability to rent in the future. Landlords and tenants should be aware that court filings are public and may be viewed by future landlords, employers, or others. An eviction can appear on a tenant's credit report, making it harder to rent or get loans in the future. Credit bureaus may record unpaid rent or court judgments. Tenants should check their credit reports regularly and dispute any errors. Landlords also use credit checks to screen applicants, so maintaining good credit is important. To sum up, the eviction process involves several key steps. Notice: court filings, hearings, and possible removal by law enforcement. Both landlords and tenants have rights and responsibilities at every stage. Understanding the process, knowing your rights, and seeking help early can make a big difference. Remember, eviction is a legal matter with long-term consequences, so it's always best to resolve issues before they escalate. Eviction is never easy, but understanding the process can help you navigate it with confidence. Whether you're a landlord or a tenant, knowing your rights, keeping good records, and seeking help when needed are key to protecting yourself. If you ever face eviction, remember that resources and support are available. Stay informed, communicate openly, and take action early to avoid the worst outcomes.